My name is Heather, and as always, with a vengeance, and I hope I can't. Why does my tongue feel so thick? And that is Harper must go. Hello, and welcome to another video. My name is Heather, and as always, I'm reading with a vengeance, and I hope you are too. Here we are at the beginning of 2026. I'm sure we are all hoping this is going to be a much better year than 2025. And I have to say, if nothing else good happens this year, at least I can rest on the joy that Harry Styles is coming out with a new album in March. And on top of that, I might get to see him live again. So there's that. But to the books. I am here to talk to you about the books that I am excited to read in 2026, that I personally feel like I need to read in 2026. So I looked back on previous videos that I've done like this, 20 some odd books to read in 2020, whatever. I noticed two things. In 2023 and 2024, I had somewhat some categories going on, but really the book selections were quite random. And then the other thing that I noticed is that I did not do a yearly TBR for 2025. I am willing to bet that I went into 2025 without a TBR because 2025 started off a lot different for me than 2026 started. I was, working in a bookstore. I was running a book club. So there were a lot of books that were already inherently on my TBR. So I think I felt like setting a TBR was going to be too overwhelming. And this video didn't start off as a 2026 TBR. This started off as a, why haven't I read these books yet? So that's going to be one of the categories that I have for these books that I'm hoping to read for 2026. And when I said before that I kind of picked books randomly, it wasn't so much that the books were random, it was more a generalization of what books I was going to read. For instance, I think I had a category of, I want to read some vegan cookbooks. And so I picked some from that category. Or I want to read books that are nonfiction books about the climate crisis. And so I picked some books about that. So these categories are a little bit more specific. So I'm a little bit more hopeful about being successful with this TBR. And I say successful, I mean, I'm not too hard on myself about not completing the TBR that I set for myself. But that's the other thing I noticed about my previous TBRs is I did not do well. There were a lot of books on those lists that I did not read. There might even be a couple that are making a reappearance on this list, but that's neither here nor there. Let's get into it. I have 7 categories. The first category that I'm going to go into, it's going to be first because there's only one book in this category, and that is my fantasy attempt. And my one and only fantasy attempt that I'm going to try to read this year is The Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. I have talked a lot to you guys about me trying to get into fantasy, and I have tried and DNF'd and tried and DNF'd, and I just can't find. Hi, Harper. I think we have a guest appearance. Hi, sweet baby girl. I don't know if you can see her. I've tried and tried to get into fantasy. I can't really put my finger on why it's so important to me to get into fantasy and enjoy fantasy, but I really want to find a fantasy series that I can just immerse myself into and escape into. So many people, as I said, I've mentioned this before to you all, and so many of you have recommended Robin Hobb. And so that's who I'm going to start with. The next category for my TBR is series continuation. So this won't come as a surprise to you. Of course, I want to continue on with the Armand Gamache series by Louise Penny. I've been pretty good about reading at least one from that series. And I think the last one I read was last January. It was one of the first books I read for 2025. I love that series. It's such a great, I wouldn't say cozy mystery, but the characters in it, I just love them. And I feel like I miss them when I'm not reading about them. So I believe I'm on number 5 in that series. So I hope to get to that this year. No, I will be getting to that this year. Another series that I am bound and determined to finish because I only have one left. It's a trilogy, and that is the Beartown series by Frederick Backman. I've read the first two. I love them. I hear from a lot of people that the third one is like their favorite. So I'm hoping that that will be the same experience for me. One series I haven't revisited in several years, and I don't even know why I haven't, is the Thomas Lindley series by Elizabeth George. And she's probably, I think the last one she wrote was like number 28. I could be wrong about that. And I've only read the first 7. I think it's been so long, and it's such a great mystery series. And again, these are characters that I absolutely love. They evolve with each book, and the mystery themselves are very, very compelling. And the final series I think I'm most excited about is the Cal Hooper series by Tana French. The third and final in the trilogy, called The Keeper, I believe comes out in March. So I will definitely be reading that one this year. And then the last one for this category is not really a series, it's a sequel. I think there's only going to be 2, but I could be making that up. But Candace Carty-Williams is coming out with another Queenie book. I'll pop the cover up here. I can't remember the name of it, if they even have a cover. I loved Queenie, and so I'm very excited to see what she gets up to in this one. Oh, you thought I was done with the series, but I do want to get to a couple of the books that I have in my physical library to share with you that I hope to get to this year. And one of them is the second in the, and I don't think it's a series, I think it's just a duology, and that's the Northern Spy books by Flynn Berry. I have Trust Her. So I really, really enjoyed Northern Spy. This book actually came out in June of 2024, and this is the ARC. So you get an idea of how long I've had this on my shelf. All right, that's enough of series and sequels and duologies. The next category I want to go over with you is favorite authors. These are authors that I've already read that I really, really love, and I'm trying to get to their backlist. 3 that I'll talk to you about. This isn't so much a backlist, but Bren Greenwood came out with a book last year. She has written one of my all-time favorite books, All the Ugly and Wonderful Things. If you haven't read that, I highly recommend that. But she came out with a book last year, and it's called Nobody Knows You're Here. And I've heard nothing but good things about that one. So I really hope to get to that one. There's 2 other books in her backlist that are super hard to find. I'm not a big fan of Amazon. I think they're evil. So with that out of the equation, it's really hard for me to get certain books that just aren't in the mainstream. But this one is in the mainstream. So I really, really hope to get to it. Another author that I want to read the backlist for is Catherine Chidgey. She wrote Pet, which was one of my favorites. She also wrote Remote Sympathy, which was on the Women's Prize a couple of years ago. But the book that a lot of people talk about as their favorite by her is The Axeman's Carnival. So that has been on my TBR for probably since I read Pet. So I really hope to get to that one this year. And I really need to stop saying I really hope to get to that this year, because that's kind of implied with this video. And then finally, the other author that I really, really enjoy is Ashley Winstead. Now, she came out with This Book Will Bury Me last year, and I have that on my e-reader. I just haven't gotten to it yet. And then she will be featuring in another category later on in this video, but I really want to get to This Book Will Bury Me. I've also heard many, many good things about that. I want to cover the miscellaneous category only because there's only 2 books on them. One of them is a classic, and I could have had the category classics, but then I would have only had 1 book on it. And then the other one is a nonfiction, and I could have had a category of nonfiction books I want to read this year, but there were too many nonfiction books that are really high on my list, high on my radar to read in 2026 that are going to be published this year. So they're under that one. And so this particular nonfiction isn't new for 2026. So anyways, I just put that 1 classic and that 1 nonfiction in my miscellaneous category. And that's all to say that the classic that I want to read this year is Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. I'm pretty sure this book has been on all my TBRs for the year, all 2 of them. And I don't do well with classics either, but so many people love this book, and so many people say that it is accessible, considering that it's a classic and when it was written. And I think its gothic-y horror will work in my favor for this book. So I really want to give a concerted effort to read Rebecca this year. And then the nonfiction book that isn't going to be published in 2026 that I have wanted to read, and I actually have it on my e-reader, is Selfish, Shallow, and Self-Absorbed, 16 Writers on the Decision Not to Have Kids. This is the editor is Megan Daum. And this is a book that's been on my radar for a couple of years, and I really want to finally get to it this year. Finally, just in the recent past, maybe the past couple of years, has it really been okay to share with other people that I'm deciding not to have kids. I've never wanted to have kids. Back in my childbearing years, these are not conversations that you could have with comfortably. People were very judgmental about women who chose not to have children or have no desire to have children. And I'm so happy this is becoming much more of, I hate to say trend, but for lack of a better word, but more and more people are choosing not to have children. And I feel a little bit more acceptance when people find out that I decided not to have children. So that's all to say that I want to read these essays, and I would love to hear different writers' perspective about this particular decision that they made in their lives. The next category is awards that I'm following. And if you've been here before, you know what 2 awards I will absolutely be following this year. One award I've been following for several years, and that is the Women's Prize for Fiction. The long list is announced in February, so I typically like to read the majority of those books, which is quite the endeavor because it's 16 books is what makes up the long list. So I will be making that attempt again. I already have my tickets for the live show, so I will be going to London in June for the live show. I'm super excited about that. But of course, Women's Prize are going to be the books I will be reading this year. And the other prize I will be following for the first time this year. And I made a video recently about it because I only just found out about it. But to be fair, this is only going to be the second year for this particular prize. And that is the Climate Fiction Prize. That long list also comes out in February. Since it's the second year, it's hard to say how many books will be on that long list. I think 8 were on last year's long list, so that's certainly a little bit easier to accomplish than 16, but I will be making every effort. The next category of books I want to read in 2026 is what I mentioned before, and that is, how did I not read these books in 2025? These books were very popular, and not just popular, but were on favorites of the year lists. The first one is Buckeye by Patrick Ryan. This one, fortunately, I have the audiobook on my Libro FM app. So that makes it more likely that I'm going to get to it this year because I listen to a lot of audiobooks. The next one I have in my physical library, and I really wanted to get to it during spooky season, but it just didn't work out that way. I think I read another one of this author's during spooky season. But so many people have picked this one up and raved about it. So I'm super excited to get to it. And that is The Buffalo Hunter by Stephen Graham Jones. This author, he's kind of a love him or hate him author. He's got a very unique writing style, but I like his writing style, and I'm really hoping.
I'm not even going to say it. You know.
The next one is by a very popular author that I didn't quite do well the first time I read her. The author I'm talking about is Alice Feeney, and the first, I think, and only book that I've read by her was Sometimes I Lie, and I think I was more confused than anything else, but I did enjoy her writing style. I was captivated by her story and her characters. And the one that everybody's been talking about this past year that made me want to try her again is Beautiful Ugly. And it turns out I have this audiobook already, so there's a really high chance that I will get to this book. It's not very highly rated on Goodreads, but I don't know, a lot of the booktubers that I follow that I kind of mesh with their reading tastes rave about this book. So this will be the next if I read Alice Feeney. that I'll be reading. Speaking of mystery thrillers, another one that a lot of people were talking about last year was The Missing Half by Ashley Flowers. This was all over the place. And again, I had this audiobook, so it being a mystery thriller and me actually having it really makes a likelihood shoot up that I will read it this year. Another book that was being talked about by so many people last year is Heart the Lover by Lily King. Now, Lily King's been on my radar. Her Writers and Lovers has been on my TBR for quite a long time. A lot of people love that book, but I don't think as many people were raving about that book as have been for Heart the Lover. Now, this is another genre that I don't necessarily gravitate towards, which is romance. But so many people who don't read romance as well have raved about this book. I think it's going to be Lily King's writing and it being more of a love story than a romance, which I absolutely enjoy much more than romance. So I would like to get to Heart the Lover. I would like to get to Lily King. If I can't get Writers and Lovers, it will be Heart the Lover. Great news about this next one because it just came through on my Libby app. So it is 100% going to be read once I finish my current audiobook, and that is Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid. You know as well as I do that everybody and everybody's mother were talking about Atmosphere. And not only that, so many people had Atmosphere not only on their top books of the year, but their number one book of the year. I love Taylor Jenkins Reid. I think there's only 2 books that I haven't read by her, and they were her older books. So they're a little bit harder to come by, harder to find. I'll eventually get to them. So I have a feeling I'm going to absolutely love this book, and I can't wait to start reading it. I'll probably be starting it by the time this video is published. And the last book in the Why Haven't I Read This category is The Correspondent by Virginia Evans. All the everybody's that have been talking about Atmosphere have also been talking about The Correspondent and also putting it as their number one book of the year. Well, obviously not the same people that put Atmosphere as their number one book, but you know what I'm saying. So many people are raving about this book, and I love a good epistolary novel. I have been a victim of the past to succumbing to the hype and then it not working for me, but I feel like Atmosphere and I feel like The Correspondent, they're going to be exceptions. I feel like I'm going to be in that group that love these books, and I'm very, very excited to read those 2 specifically. All right, the final, so I have 8 categories. The second to the last category I'll talk to you about are books in my physical library that I truly, truly want to get to sooner rather than later. So I'm going to quickly go through those. I'm currently reading Shuggie Bain. I loved Young Mungo, so it's taking me a little bit longer to get into this one, but this book has been languishing on my bookshelf since I finished Young Mungo, but I'm finally reading that. So many people read Lonesome Dove last year, and I know I'm going to love this book. It's just a little bit of a chunker. I saw the miniseries, the original miniseries back in the 80s, and I absolutely loved it. I think it's one of the all-time best TV miniseries that has ever been aired. It's such a great story. I know I'm going to love this book. It's just a matter of committing to the time it's going to take to read this. I can't even remember how I came across this copy, but it's in my hot little hands. I really want to get to it this year. Kristen Hanna is a automatic read for me, and I am still working my way through her back list. And one of the ones I have in my physical library, and I have no excuse of not reading it yet, is The Four Winds. This is a favorite among Kristen Hanna fans. My favorite so far is The Nightingale. That's going to be a really tough one to beat. So I really have high hopes for this one. 2 books that will, if I don't read before this year's spooky season, will definitely be read for spooky season. This is FantasticLand by Mike Bachoven. This was recommended to me by my very good friend. Hi, Carrie. Not only do I trust my friend Carrie, her taste in books, but it's a horror novel. It takes place in the 70s and it has vibes of Kirsten White's Hide, which I very much enjoyed. So this is a definite for spooky season, if not sooner. The other one that is a definite for spooky season, if not sooner, is Brother. This one has been recommended by several people on BookTube, but one of my favorite BookTubers is Peyton over at Book in Hand. If you haven't watched her channel, go check her out. She's just a delight. But she raves, I'm pretty sure she raved about this book. If I'm just making it up, I'm really, really sorry, but go check her channel out anyways. So this one will definitely be read at spooky season, if not sooner. These last 3 books were literally on my nightstand, so they're kind of on my next up reads. I'm a mood reader, so it could change, but I really like to put books on my bookstand that when I'm going through looking for my next book to read, if I have like 4 that I want to choose from, I'll choose the one that I want to read next, but then I'll put those other 3 on my nightstand. Again, it could change by the time I get to those books, but here's what's on my nightstand. The Heaven and Earth Grocery Store by James McBride. I loved.
What is it? Kong. What is it?
Deacon King Kong. I loved that story. I love his writing. So many people have raved about this. So hopefully that is next up after Shuggie Bain. This one I picked up when I went to a literary festival in Charleston back in November, and I was just perusing. Of course, I went to all the bookstores in Charleston, and I had to bring home a book from a literary festival, and I ended up going to Lady Bird Books. So I even got a sticker, which is nice. And the book that I chose to bring home from Charleston is Frankie by Graham Norton. I read one of his books. Which one did I read? I always forget. I want to read Homestretch. I read A Keeper, and it was fantastic. I love Graham Norton. I love his show. I love his humor. I just love him. And so when I saw this book, I knew that was the one that needed to come home with me. So that will be after Heaven and Earth Grocery Store, hopefully. And then finally, The Berry Pickers by Amanda Peters. This one was really big, I want to say in 2024, if not 2023. And it has been languishing on my shelf ever since. And so many people love it and rave about it. And it is, I think, like a dual timeline mystery, which I love. Yeah, I think 2026 is the year that I need to get to it. All right, the final category I think I'm most excited about, I think anybody's excited about, new books that are coming out in 2026 that I want to read in 2026. The first one is an absolute no-brainer because her first debut novel is one of my all-time favorite books. I'm talking about Jenny Godfrey. She wrote a little gem called The List of Suspicious Things that I happened to get in my goodie bag the first year I went to the Women's Prize. And then it took me a year to read it. And I was kicking myself that it took me so long to read it. It is fantastic. It is gotten its due respect, and everybody's raving about it as they should be. But anyways, Jenny Godfrey is coming out with another book. And when will it be published? It comes out in February. It's called The Barbecue at Number 9. I don't buy brand new books very often, but I will probably be making an exception for this one. Gillian McAllister is coming out with a new book this year. It's called Caller Unknown. That's also coming out in February. I read Wrong Place, Wrong Time, I believe. Really enjoyed it. Enjoyed it much more than I even anticipated. So I'm going to give her another shot. Another author that I'm super excited is coming out with a new book this year is Jane Harper, and she's coming out with Last One Out. Jane Harper is an Australian author. I've read all of her books. They're all fantastic. She wrote the Dry series, which they made like a limited series on Hulu, I want to say. Of course, not only is she an Australian author, but all of her stories take place in Australia, which I don't know why, I just love. And they're more often than not, if not all of them, a crime mystery. And this one is no different. Last One Out comes out, well, it came out in Australia in October, but I think it's going to be made available in the US in April of this year. And that might be another one that I make an exception as far as buying a new book. I love her writing. I love reading about mystery thrillers in Australia. and she just can't miss. Tayari Jones wrote An American Marriage, which I absolutely loved, and she is coming out with a book called Kin. And that is coming out in February. Lots of books coming out in February. Yikes. That and the Climate Fiction Prize and the Women's Fiction Prize. It's going to be a busy reading month. Hopefully, right? So Kin is a literary fiction, historical fiction, takes place in the South. I'm all for it. I can't wait to get to that one. Her writing is just phenomenal. If you haven't read her yet, she has another one that I have been meaning to get to. What is it called? Silver Sparrow, that a lot of people rave about, even more so than An American Marriage. So who knows? Maybe I'll read 2 by her this year. We'll see. There's 2 memoirs that I know I'll be reading this year. The one that I will 100% be reading this year, if I can get my hands on it this year. Who knows how long I'll have to wait for the audiobook. But Cher's memoir is in 2 parts. And the first part came out last year, and I read it. I listened to it in the later part of the year, and it was fantastic. Absolutely loved it. It's partially read by Cher, but the other part is read by a friend of hers. And it's interesting because their voices are very similar. But anyways, I absolutely loved her story. And so part 2, I believe, comes out in May. So I'll be reading part 2 of her memoir, because part 1 only got up to, I think, her marriage to Greg Allman. So we haven't even really gotten into her acting stuff yet. So I'm really, really excited to hear about that stuff. And the other memoir that I just found out about yesterday that I can't wait to get to is You with the Sad Eyes by Christina Applegate. I love Christina Applegate so much. I love her evolution as an actor, seeing where she started, where she is now. My heart breaks for her with her medical issues that she's having, and I'm very much interested in hearing her story. So that comes out, I want to say, in May also. I could be making that up. Look at this cover too. She is just gorgeous, just stunning. Love her. Okay, so her memoir comes out in March. I knew it was an M month. Anyways, definitely be reading that one. These last books, I'm super excited because I actually have the ARC in my audio book library. So I'm super excited. When I was talking about Ashley Winstead before, and I told you she was going to feature in another category, this is the category I'm talking about. She's got a book coming out. I want to say it's already out. It's come out this month, and that is Future Saints. So I will be listening to that in the very near future. Another book that I have the ARC for that I mentioned in the Climate Fiction Prize video is The Forest on the Edge of Time by Jasmine Kirkbride. So I was fortunate enough to get the ARC for that one. That one comes out in February, and I'm really hoping to see that on the Climate Fiction Prize. We'll see. And these next 2 books, I haven't heard anybody talking about. So I'm excited to share with you that I have the ARC for Scavengers by Kathleen Boland. Never heard of this author, but when I saw this come up as available as an ARC, and I read the synopsis, it's about a woman and her estranged mother. Under circumstances, they get together and they go on this road trip. Mother-daughter relationships to me are very special. I really enjoy reading those stories. So I immediately picked up that ARC. That one comes out that's supposed to come out this month. It came out a couple of days ago. So that's out. So maybe you have heard of it. Who knows? Is this a debut novel? It is a debut novel. So who knows? Maybe we'll see this on the Women's Prize. You never know. And then the other book that I'm really excited about that I have an ARC for is The Unwritten Rules of Magic by Harper Ross. Now this says it's a fantasy, but I think it leans a little bit more into magical realism, which I have much better luck with. And this one said for fans of The Midnight Library, which that's a book that I actually really, really enjoyed. This one has more to do with a magical typewriter and a woman grieving the loss of her father, which books about grief I tend to gravitate towards. I'm not sure why, but this one sounded like one that was just right up my street, even though the first descriptor is fantasy. So we'll see about that. So that's it. Those are my plans for 2026. Those are the books that I not only hope to get to, but I've prioritized to get to for one reason or another. Have you read any of these books? Obviously, with the exception of books that haven't come out yet. What books are you excited for to come out in 2026, or what books are on your next up list to read in the very near future? I would love to hear about your 2026 plans as well. And I also want to let you know that by popular demand in the comments from my last video, I will be doing a video talking about all the books that I DNF'd in 2025. So that will be forthcoming. But other than that, that is it for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.